I rise today to speak about the difficult fiscal choices that we, as members of Congress, must soon make in the deficit-cutting proposals that President Obama has recently made. As we discuss these fiscal choices, and as we face our exploding debts and deficits, it is clear that our nation is truly at a crossroads. A nation that was built on the strength of our people's optimism must struggle to overcome a loss of confidence. A loss of confidence that comes from an economy that has struggled for far too long. A loss of confidence that comes from watching debt and deficits explode. A loss of confidence that comes from watching Republicans and Democrats engage in the fruitless partisan fight. The American people worry about how to get their families out of debt and their financial house in order. They worry about finding or keeping a job. They worry about how they're going to pay the rent, how they're going to take care of their children, how they're going to keep clothes on their backs, and how maybe they can buy them a Christmas present. And once again, instead of all of us coming together to do what is right for the nation and lighten their worries, congressional Republicans and Democrats alike, and the President, are again gearing up for a fight about politics, even as our nation's fiscal and economic picture gets worse every minute. Today, we yet again find ourselves on the brink, and I can't begin to explain why to the American people. This summer, they watched us go through this exercise, the Senate, the House, and the President, and then we agreed on spending cuts to keep the government working. Where I come from, Mr. President, and the same as you, in the great state of Minnesota, your word is your bond, and an agreement is an agreement. It's one that should be kept, and it's one that we negotiated. It shouldn't be changed in midstream. I'm committed to passing a clean CR to keep our government working until the super committee that we all are supporting come up with the recommendations to reduce this deficit. Mr. President, in the midst of yet another disagreement over whether to keep the government running, the people of West Virginia and the American people are demanding that we put our partisan differences aside and work together in the best interest of this country. They are pleading for us to quit fighting and worrying about the next election and start worrying about the next generation. With our nation facing a death spiral of debt, now is the time that each of us should be zeroing in on credible, common-sense solutions that have truly bipartisan support. After carefully reviewing the President's recommendations to the so-called super committee, I believe that they fall short of what this country needs to put our fiscal house in order. President Obama's deficit recommendation not only falls short of his stated $4.4 trillion goal, but could, according to analysis done by the Center for a Responsible Federal Budget, have the perverse effect of adding as much as $1.9 trillion to our nation's debt. I also greatly concerned about rehashing unproductive recommendations, like raising tax rates on small businesses in a recession, and budget gimmicks like the notion that taxpayers will somehow save $1.1 trillion from not fighting wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, which I believe we shouldn't be there anyway. And I've said this, Mr. President, on my best day, I can't sell that to the people of West Virginia. Or should we try to sell it to the American people? That is not to say that the President's proposal is all bad. There's some good stuff in there. I have long said that our tax system needs to be more fair and balanced, and that billionaires like Mr. Buffett should pay their fair share. I appreciate the concept of the Buffett rule and look forward to seeing more details. And I agree that one of the best investments that we all can make is the infrastructure of this great country. But as they stand right now, President Obama's proposal is too skewed to appeal to both sides of the aisle. So we see what we see happening again. Now, if we are being serious about addressing our debt and deficits, neither Republicans nor Democrats can propose partisan proposals and then pretend that they are credible. We can't do that any longer. The American people deserve better, and I also know that we can do a lot better. In my short time in Congress, I have seen only one plan that has earned support from members of both parties. In fact, the President's own bipartisan deficit commission, the Bowles-Simpson Group, is the best example of what can be accomplished if we put politics aside and do what is right for our nation. While no one, including me, will agree with everything in the Bowles-Simpson approach, it at least offered a common-sense, bipartisan template that would cut spending, restore tax fairness, and would help restore fiscal sanity to our nation. To date, it is the only plan that has offered a framework that has had bipartisan support from the beginning and still has it now. But instead of this approach, there are many people on both sides of the aisle who have chosen a path that all but guarantees that Republicans and Democrats will continue to fight over how to solve our fiscal problems instead of seeking common ground and common sense solutions. For the sake of our nation, for our families, we cannot let this happen. We must act, and we must act together. Mr. President, looking ahead to vigorous debates of the fall, my hope is that the Deficit Supercommittee will seize the moment and seek common ground to develop a plan that puts our nation on the right path to fiscal accountability. Common sense to me is that you would start with a plan that already has bipartisan support, because it'll take both sides of the aisle fixing this problem. And I urge them and the President to look beyond partisan politics and do what is right for this country. I continue to urge the committee to look past their legal mandate of $1.5 trillion in savings and revenue, and instead look for reforms that will create much broader fairness in our system that will lead to deficit reductions of at least $4 trillion. I, for one, will work with the Senate Democrats and the Republicans who are committed to develop a common sense debt fix that responsibly reduces spending, makes our tax system more fair, we cut waste, fraud, and abuse, and make sure that we protect the critical programs like Social Security and Medicare.